Mr. Loening, we have a NHRC here, National Human Rights Commission, and there's a debate about whether they should be reset or set zero, which means that they should be replaced wholesale or not. How do you select human rights commissioners?
Listening to the debate today and also to the debate yesterday we had, and I was visiting your National Human Rights Institution yesterday, and we had a long debate. And while I was sitting here listening to you, I thought, what's the key? I mean, why does it work in Germany or in other European countries? And you were debating about, how to put people on the Electoral Commission, on the National Human Rights Commission, all of these issues, how to draft the laws, and I think all of that is important. And you have to do it in a good way. You have to make sure that it is inclusive, that people are treated equally, that each person has a vote and a say. That is very important. But you also, if you construct these things, have to think that at the end of the day, it's not going to be about paragraph 7b. It's going to be about the trust of the people. There must be, all of these systems must be created and lived in a way that people will say, okay, this is a system that works for me. This is a system that protects my personal freedom and that gives me choices and opportunities. And that is true for all of these commissions, I believe. I was thinking how our electoral commission works. It's usual civil servants. It's civil servants because we trust them, and then, of course, we have recourse to the courts. If we feel this is a wrong decision, we can go to court. And we can say, okay, please check this decision by the Electoral Commission. And there's a second element which is extremely important. My voting place is in a school opposite my house. So I go there, and if I go there at 6 o'clock when they close, I can watch the counting. And anyone can walk in and, just watch the counting and can make remarks saying, I think you made a mistake counting here, or can make complaints. So it's transparent, it's open. And so these are elements that will bring trust. You were talking about qualification, for example, of candidates or of people in commissions. And I've been a party chairman in Berlin for many years, and how do we select candidates? The formal qualification is only you have to be of 18 minimum age, and you have to be a German citizen. And beyond that, the qualification is that you are able to convince people to vote for you. If I put up a qualification that you have to be a lawyer or you have to be this or that, I exclude people. I cannot do that. In a democratic society, everybody needs to be able to run for office. If he can convince voters or she can convince voters, she's qualified. That's the qualification that is needed in a democratic society. So openness to anybody, nevertheless what his background or her background is, transparency is extremely important. Then of course if you're talking about electoral commissions, it is clear there should be no conflict of interest. I mean, if you're a candidate, you cannot sit on an electoral commission, that's obvious. Or if you're a man, if you're a husband or wife is running, you shouldn't sit. But these are the obvious things. Let me talk about the National Human Rights Commission because you asked about it. We have a very interesting construction in Germany. It's an association, and members of the association are people like me that work in human rights or that are active in human rights for many years. It's very diverse in its membership. And the membership selects a board of trustees, and the board of trustees appoints a director and some people, the staff. Now the funding comes from Parliament. So Parliament has committed itself to give the funding under the Paris Principle, not to interfere in the work. And civil society has made a commitment to support the National Commission for Human Rights by giving input and some guidance to some extent to the director and his staff. But there are limits to the guidance that the members of the association can give. So it is a hybrid construction somewhere between a state institution and a completely independent institution. And I find it a very interesting model. It does work because trust again, you know, because even though there are political differences within the membership, we know that at the end of the day there is a core set of values that we can all come together on. And they are the values that Kasit was talking about. You know, personal freedom is really at the core of these values. And that is the core value which, let's say, all the parties in my country, we will agree on that. Human rights. The defense of human rights is really at the core, and there is some debate about the parties, about the interpretation, this bit or that bit, but the core bit, we don't have a debate on that. We agree on that. And that makes us very strong. And that is a core element of the trust that is really the, let's say, what keeps the system together, what keeps the system working, what keeps citizens believe that the government will work for them. So it is something that I don't know how it is achieved. I think it is achieved over time. Trust is achieved over time. It is worth the effort. I don't have any doubt that taking the time to make this effort to give citizens the trust into their system, this is well worth the effort. Because at the end of the day, if I think of the relations my country has and with which countries we have very good relations, it's always the countries where people trust their governments and governments trust their people. It's democratic countries. That's where we have good and friendly relations, because we know there is a common element of value and a common element of trust.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I wish that there is a ready-made model or recipe to have trust the way that you've talked about your society. For us, from an organic ground zero, we have a deeply embedded culture of patronage and patron-client networks. And so when it comes to politics, we used to have more elected representatives, even in the Senate. So the way that the Constitution is normally structured is the Senate plays a key role in selecting the individuals, the commissioners of the various independent agencies. But over time, the Senate then was made half appointed and then eventually fully appointed now. So there are a lot of concerns about the integrity of the individuals that will be selected for the independent agencies in the coming months. We have 15 minutes. Questions, comments from the floor, most welcome. I just want to have a quick response to the gender balance. You mentioned Ms. Doherty. We actually had a US ASEAN session last Monday. 2 out of 3 speakers were women, and then we had some panels in the past, all women in fact. So the way that we operate normally is just what works, what brings the people to listen, and in this case it's just this way today. Questions, comments?
Kun Chaturon and Kun Kasit, I wonder if you guys can speculate on why, if the upcoming election, if there is one, and if it is indeed going to be meaningless, and as far as, why do you suppose Kun Prayut seems to be trying to postpone the whole thing? I mean, it's going to be meaningless anyway. And as politicians, why join this farce? I mean, why not just say right now you're going to boycott it anyway? I mean, do you see some wiggle room in the future that you can actually get something done?
So 2 parts to it. First, why not have an election? It's almost a fail-safe election. There are layers of protection for the incumbent government, right? So you write the rules already, and maybe you can get all the people you want to be in the Senate and to be on independent agencies, and then you have elections. So you can pretty much kind of, as Mr. Kasit said, direct control and command even after the election. So why not have it? And then if it takes place and if it's going to be a farce, then why join for politicians? From Chaturon first.
The Pheu Thai party has not has not decided, has not made a decision that they will run in the next election yet. But there can be no meeting, so. But it is more likely that it will run in the next election. The role of political parties and the role of politicians, meaning MPs, will be very limited after the election, as I said earlier. But there is still some room, if I try to explain the understanding of most politicians, or some politicians who want to at least try to democratize the country. There's some room that politicians can contribute to the democratization of the country. When there is an election, people, electorates, can to some extent share the power, even though they cannot actually, practically, the Thai electorates cannot determine who is going to be in the government, what kind of policies the government should have and should implement. But we still believe that political parties still can show to the public better policies when eventually non-elected person becomes prime minister, and then he can form a government. He will run the country by abiding by the so-called 20-year national strategy and reform plans that they have designed. Then it's a duty of political parties to show some kind of alternative. I don't expect that major political party will be able to be the core of the coalition government after the next election. But we can provide people with the alternatives. And in the future, we believe that people will realize that this constitution, which passed the referendum with majority, is actually very problematic, and there need to be some change. Again, it's very difficult to amend this constitution according to the constitution itself. But when Thai public wants to talk about the amendment of the constitution in the future, political parties should be able to show to people what is the benefit of being democratic if you are allowed to exercise power, if you are allowed to run this country. What are you going to do? All of this can be done before and after the election, and especially in the parliament. This is what I can say. We in the party, most of us in the party realize that it's very difficult for any party to gain the majority, and it's extremely difficult for us to form a government, and it's almost impossible for us to join a non-elected person or a person from the military in the government.
Why Kun Prayut keep on postponing and so on? I would blame the Chinese because they keep on coming to Bangkok, or when they they welcome the delegation from Thailand in Beijing, they said one party system is very good, General. So that's the first point. Second is that I think General Prayut, Pravit and so on, I don't think that they are not naive. I think they're quite astute. They are aware that most of the political parties are in disarray. A lot of political party leaders and political movements every month all have to march to the Court of Justice of so many charges and so on, from defamation to infringe on the national security, martial law and so on. Okay, I go to the court quite regular for that matter. Kun Chaturon has no passport as yet; he's not allowed to travel abroad. So that's the situation that we are faced with. Okay. Then the middle class, as I mentioned, and the upper class, urban, say maybe 4 to 5 million. Middle class, upper class, used to be against the military government in the 1980s and so on. But I think they have become disillusioned with the political class and prefer to offer the second best, namely the military junta. That's the reality at this point in time. And they are quite satisfied with the quietness on the street. I think we have had a lot of upheavals and instability and so on. So I think the honeymoon period still goes on. After 3 years, it can go on for a few years. And I think the economic downturn, minimum growth about 3% is still quite acceptable to the middle class and the society in general. We still have inflow of tourism and investment. You know, our balance of, I think, payment and so on is quite good. So far so good for the military to go on. There is no mood as yet of people wanting to come out in spite of the Article 44 of not gathering more than 5 and so on. But the mood of the people to come in and protest again and to demand for the quick return to democracy is not there. So I think General Prayut and Pravit and so on are in quite comfortable zone to continue as they are. Second, coming back to the Democrat Party, I can say on behalf of the party only on one point, that we have said before the referendum and after that we do accept and acknowledge the outcome of the referendum. But as to the participation in the next election, if I were the political leader replacing Kun Apisit, I would boycott the meeting. Thank you very much.
My question is
Please
this.
tell us your name and where you come from.
My name is Kabiru Bala. I am charged the affairs of the Nigerian embassy here. What I want to ask, I think, has been touched by Kun Chaturon. It has something to do with this issue. Are there chances that at the end of this roadmap, this transition from military rule to a democratic one, is there any chance that the structures that the NCPO has established could be maybe reviewed to make them democratic? I ask this question because I have the sense that the panel here is of the opinion that the transition now, as it is not democratic. I also say this because I have the experience of coming from a country where we had transition from military rule to a democratic one. Usually, by experience and by nature, the military has characteristics of command and control. Whatever they do is command and control. So the real transition starts not now, but rather at the end of the transition from military to a democratic one. That is to say, when NCPO departs, perhaps that is when the real transition to democracy in this country could start. This is my question. Thank you.
Just one question to both Kun Chaturon and Kun Kasit. Kun Chaturon have gone into the details explaining how the draft organic law on political parties have been rather antithesis to the strengthening of political party. While Kun Kasit has played an instrumental role over the years in opposing various proxy parties of Mr. Thaksin Shinawatra. So the question is, given the still deep-rooted fear or paranoia even towards Thaksin and anything that has to do with his proxy party, be it Pheu Thai or any previous incarnation. What has the Pheu Thai party done over the past 3 years since the coup to make itself more accommodating to the general Thai public, including people like Kun Kasit, who would really going to shut down the airport or paralyze the kingdom in order to oust a political party literally run by Kun Thaksin? Has there been any dynamics? We have really heard very little. And this fear is still deep-rooted, and as Kun Kasit rightly have said, a large swath of the middle class still prefer the military regimes to that of anything under Thaksin.
Thank you for the two questions. I think very good question, especially Kun Pravit. The participation in the constitution drafting and the debate and so on were again imposed and controlled. So I think most of the Thai citizens went to the referendum in the month of August last year. There was not much of the extensive and in-depth discussion. But if the junta were to open the debate now and have all the political parties be able to add their views, organize and so on, and then have a second referendum, I think the outcome would be totally different. Okay, but I think the junta has known already that this imposition of the will create further problem after the elections. I think they have all the powers to amend, to changes and so on. You have to have that political will and the vision first, and think about Thailand as a democratic institute and not the stability of the nation with the military having the stability of their hold on to the power also. So that's the first point. Second, after the elections, if we were to repeal or to amend the constitution, I think we need 2/3 of the majority in the parliament. It's very difficult. Maybe that rule have to be changed or amended to make it a simple majority. Kun Chaturon and we meet maybe once every 2 months between the Democrat members parties and the Pheu Thai on and off. So we see each other, we do talk to each other. We are friends and colleagues in the political family. That's one point. What we talk, I think Kun Thaksin sitting, I think in Hong Kong or Dubai, does know. And I think the things very much is in the court of Kun Thaksin, him alone, whether he will be really in exile or still have that wish to really come back and be supremo in the Thai political process again. Can he cut himself off and leave Thailand alone and let the professional politicians, particularly of the Pheu Thai and Democrats and so on, to work out the formula to move the democratic Thailand forward? And one other point, I said it all along, publicly, in private. I think there must be someone in Bangkok have to sit down and negotiate with Kun Thaksin. You have to come to the minimum position, whether we could accommodate one another. And get over the hump, the Berlin Wall, and move forward. I think it needs negotiation at the end of the day, because you have to accept the reality that Kun Thaksin is still a force to be reckoned with. His populist policy measures may be destructive in terms of financial and so on, but it's liked by a large segment of the population. So let's face the reality, and there must be someone in the authorities or a neutral body have to do some sort of negotiation and find a modus vivendi for the country to hope to move forward. With the proviso that we have to hope that Kun Thaksin still have the love and the respect and the attachment for this country. I think that's important. Thank you.
So, Han Kasit, would you say then that the negotiation and compromise are imperative to move forward for civilian leadership to emerge?
Yes, and I think we have our friend from Republic of Ireland, close to Northern Ireland. And we have so many things going on the African continent, Rwanda and so on. Then at the end of the day, what? Do you punish and send everyone to jail and split the society further? I think we should have the intellectual capacity and the magnanimity of the heart to speak to one another and move forward. I think the forgiveness somewhere has to come in. We don't forget, but I think we have to move forward. And so far, for the past, since the year 2006-07, we have not been able to sit down and talk to one another in a civilized manner. That's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Kun Chaturon. Just two questions. The Nigerian example. The transition maybe has to put up with this whole process, and then the real changes will come thereafter. And then Pheu Thai beyond Thaksin, what's the chance of that?
The answer to the first question is very unlikely. Now we are in a transition from an authoritarian rule to, we have already been in the transition to a country under a constitution that is not actually the supreme law of the land. Now there's still NCPO and the section 44 of the interim constitution, that the NCPO can overrule all the decisions made by executive, legislative, and judiciary. And from now, according to the constitution, we would, after the NCPO is gone, meaning after the new government come into office, we are under this, fully under this constitution, which is a less undemocratic system than now. But it is not a democratic system. According to the constitution itself, in the section concerning amendment, it is almost impossible for political parties to amend the constitution, or people to amend the constitution. Your question is, can the organizations in the constitution realize that there needs to be some amendment? I think that it is a strategy of the NCPO and the other four rivers, the drafters, that they want to set a system where there will be an extension of their power for at least another 8 more years, because the senators the senators' term is 5 years, and that cover at least 2 elections. So 2 elections in roughly 8 years. There will be no change in these 8 years. The strategy plan will be with us for 20 years. So actually they aim to have a system like this for another 20 years. So it depends on whether Thai people in general will learn that this kind of system is not good for the country. And if you ask me, well, will it happen in the near future? I was asked this question many times in my political career. To go back very shortly, briefly, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I was asked this kind of question too. And I said it take a long time. Maybe 15 years, 20 years. 11 years after that, which is now. 12 years after that. We are even less democratic than 12 years ago. So nobody knows what's going to happen. I still hope that Thai people under the new globalization will learn about the problems of the country and realize that they have to work together in order to democratize this country. The second question, actually one of the priorities of the aims of this constitution and relevant organic laws is to get Mr. Thaksin out of Thai politics and Mr. Thaksin and his supporters not to be able to come back to power. This is very obvious, right? According to the organic laws, the political party law, it is very difficult for Mr. Thaksin to get involved with the party, directly or indirectly. So the party must be very careful. If they just have Kun Thaksin involved with the party will be easily dissolved. So at least legally, the party will have to try very hard to prevent that to happen. But more important, of course, you might ask about what about politically. Politically, I don't think that it will happen that the Pheu Thai party has no relation whatsoever with Kun Thaksin. There will still be some certain relation. But of course, it has to be legal. But the party needs to, and many of us in the party have talked about how to institutionalize the party, make the party an institution, not an ad hoc machinery of some purpose. We need to regain the potential to formulate policy, which is our strength in the past 15 years. People trust that we can formulate policy, and our policy are good enough for them to vote for us. But we haven't been able to do anything about policy formulation in the past 3 years. So we have to work hard on that. One important point to respond to Kun Pravit is, I believe that besides the issue of Mr. Thaksin, the party faced a problem that the middle class people, intellectuals, feel that in this political development, elections in the past have resulted in the situation where the middle class and some other are left out. Political parties, especially Pheu Thai party, rely on the grassroots people in the villages, people in one man, one vote. So they are the majority. They voted for the party. And then I believe that Pheu Thai party failed to formulate the policies that satisfy the middle income people. So this is a big question to be resolved. In my opinion, when we were the Thai Rak Thai party, the predecessor of the Pheu Thai party, we did not neglect either middle class people, even banking sector, financial institutions, and the big business. We had done that before. So there is no reason why Pheu Thai party has to just focus on only the people in the villages. Of course, they are important, and we still focus on them. But we do not have any necessity to neglect the other people. So that's, I think, is very crucial to the party. And in doing that, we hope that there will be less confrontation in the future.
Thank you very much. So I think that also blends in well with what Kasit said about the urban classes that have felt maybe not so connected to Pheu Thai in the past. I apologize for running over time. I think that we've had 3 constitutions, 3 decades. This is an existential decade for Thailand. If it doesn't work, then we might enter a long-term decline. So please join me in thanking all the speakers for their time, their expertise. And I apologize for running over time again. Thank you very much for joining today. Thank you.